It was supposed to be just another morning in the courthouse. People murmured quietly in the long hallway lined with cold marble floors, a mix of nervous defendants, seasoned lawyers, and officers standing guard. No one expected anything unusual, until she walked in. Tall, poised, and carrying herself like someone who had faced storms most couldn't imagine, Lieutenant Commander Jordan Hayes entered Courtroom 3B without a word. Her crisp black suit couldn't fully hide the broad shoulders and quiet strength built from years in the U.S. Navy SEALs. She wasn't there to fight today, at least not in the way she was trained to. Today she was there for justice. Quietly, calmly, she took her seat near the front, her eyes fixed ahead. But across the room, Officer Rick Dalton shifted uncomfortably. His jaw clenched the moment he saw her. His uniform looked freshly pressed, his badge gleaming, but his eyes told a different story. There was history here, something deeper than what the court docket revealed. As he crossed the courtroom, his gaze met Jordan's, and the air grew thick with tension. People noticed. Some whispered. Others glanced back and forth between the two. Nobody knew yet what had happened, but they were about to. Just 2 weeks earlier, Jordan had been pulled over in her own neighborhood. The stop, according to the police report, was for a broken taillight. But Jordan knew better. The questions asked, the tone used, the way Officer Dalton kept his hand near his holster, none of it felt routine. She complied. She always did. But what happened next turned her world upside down. She was forced to the ground, cuffed, and humiliated in front of her neighbors, despite showing her military ID and explaining she lived 2 houses down. No charges were ever filed. No body cam footage was ever released. And Officer Dalton returned to work the next day like nothing had happened. Jordan didn't come to court today for revenge. She came because she believed in the system she'd fought to protect. A system that too often didn't protect people who looked like her. But even as she sat silently in that courtroom, she knew she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was standing for something bigger. The courtroom grew quiet as Judge Levins entered, a sharp-eyed woman known for her no-nonsense attitude. The case was a preliminary hearing for Jordan's formal complaint against the department, and Officer Dalton had been called to testify. As he took the stand, Jordan didn't blink. She watched him. Steady. Dalton, on the other hand, was clearly rattled. His voice shook slightly, his eyes darting toward Jordan every few seconds. He spoke of protocol and misunderstandings, painting a picture that didn't match the bruises Jordan had taken photographs of. But no one interrupted. Not yet. It was during a recess that everything shifted. As the judge stepped out and the room slowly emptied for a break, Dalton approached. Jordan was standing near the corner, quietly speaking to her attorney when Dalton muttered something under his breath. It was low, sharp, enough to make her lawyer's eyes widen. Jordan turned slowly. "What did you say?" she asked, calm as ever. Dalton stepped closer. "You think you're better than us because you wore a uniform overseas? This is my court now." And then it happened. In one quick, heated moment that caught everyone off guard, Dalton shoved her. Not hard, but enough. Enough to cross a line. Enough to silence the entire room. People nearby gasped. Bailiff shouted. Jordan stumbled slightly but didn't fall. For half a second you could hear a pin drop. And then Jordan straightened. She didn't yell. She didn't swing. She didn't need to. She simply looked at him, her voice calm but firm. "Don't ever put your hands on me again." Everyone around them froze. The bailiff moved in. The judge had just returned and witnessed the tail end of it. Phones were already being pulled out. Whispers raced through the room. The tension had exploded, and no one was sure what would happen next. Dalton tried to speak, to explain, to twist it into something it wasn't. But this time, the room wasn't on his side. The courtroom had seen the look in Jordan's eyes, the kind of calm that only comes from someone who has faced danger and come out stronger. And here's the part no one expected. As the bailiff moved to escort Dalton away for questioning, Jordan didn't press charges. She didn't gloat. She simply turned to the judge and said, "I still believe in justice. Even when it fails me. Her words hung in the air, heavy and real. The hearing was paused. The courtroom emptied once more. But the silence that followed was different now. It wasn't the quiet of routine. It was the quiet before something bigger. Because what the city didn't know yet was that Jordan wasn't done. What they didn't see was the network of veterans, community leaders, and justice advocates already gathering behind her. What they didn't expect was the ripple effect her story would create, not just in the courtroom but across the country. And what no one saw coming was what she would do next. Because Jordan Hayes wasn't just a Black Navy SEAL. She was a woman who had spent her life protecting freedom, and now she was going to fight for it here at home, even if it meant taking on the very system that tried to break her. But the question still lingers. What happens when someone trained for war is forced to fight a battle in their own backyard? Not with weapons, but with truth. And when the next hearing comes, will the system stand with her? Or against her? You'll want to see what happens next. Jordan sat quietly on the wooden bench outside Courtroom 3B. Her back straight, hands resting calmly in her lap. The hallway buzzed with soft conversations and the occasional shuffle of footsteps, but inside her head it was quiet, focused. She wasn't new to pressure. She'd spent years in environments where a single mistake could cost lives. But this was different. This wasn't combat. This was something more complicated. More personal. She was fighting an invisible war. One where words carried more weight than bullets, and where power often wore a friendly badge. Her lawyer, Maya Chen, paced nearby, frowning as she read over a file. "You okay?" she finally asked, stopping in front of Jordan. Jordan looked up. "Yeah. I've been through worse." Maya nodded, but her eyes told another story. She'd handled civil rights cases before, but this one was different. Not just because Jordan was a Navy SEAL. Not just because of the way the case had caught fire online. Trending hashtags, video snippets from the courthouse, endless debates. It was because this case was exposing something raw. Something that people didn't like to talk about in public. How even the most disciplined, decorated and qualified Black woman could still be treated like she didn't belong. The precinct had been quiet so far. Too quiet. No official statement. No suspension for Officer Dalton. Just silence. Like they were waiting to see if the story would fade away. But Jordan wasn't going anywhere. And neither was the truth. Back at her small apartment on the edge of the city, the walls were decorated with plaques, medals, framed photos of her and her SEAL team from deployments overseas. But none of those things had mattered that night when she was pulled over. She remembered every second of it. The flashing lights in her rearview mirror. The voice on the loudspeaker telling her to exit the vehicle. The cold asphalt beneath her knees. The way Dalton had looked at her like she was a threat just for existing. She'd asked him calmly, "What's this about, officer?" He hadn't answered. He just cuffed her. She could still hear the sound of her neighbor's front door creaking open. The porch light flicking on. A teenage girl whispering, "Mom, that's Ms. Hayes." But no one had come to help. And now, just days after the courtroom incident, the story had reached national outlets. Jordan had turned down interviews so far. She wasn't doing this for attention. She wanted accountability. But the deeper they dug, the stranger things got. Maya had requested body cam footage multiple times. Each time she was told a different excuse. It wasn't recording. There was a malfunction. The data got corrupted. And yet, she'd uncovered internal emails that hinted someone had reviewed the footage days after the incident. So where was it? Even more troubling, Maya had received an anonymous envelope with no return address. Inside were printed screenshots, frames from what appeared to be a body cam. The pictures showed Jordan, hands raised, calmly talking. Then the image of Dalton, face tight, hand on his holster. And then, nothing. The final image was blank, like the recording had been cut. "We need to find the original video," Maya had said the night before. "Someone's trying to bury this." Jordan didn't flinch. "Then we dig." But it wasn't just about one officer anymore. Whispers were starting to spread about past complaints against Dalton, most of them buried or dismissed. Pattern was forming. And Jordan's case was exposing cracks in the wall. Meanwhile, Dalton had gone silent. No public comments. No apology. No remorse. But that didn't stop people from talking. "He's got connections," Maya said one afternoon. "His brother is with internal affairs. That might be why nothing's sticking." Jordan exhaled slowly. "So the whole thing's rigged. Not if we stay smart." They were smart, but the pressure was growing. One evening, Jordan returned home to find her door slightly ajar. Nothing was missing. Nothing broken. But she noticed her military files had been moved. The folder was still there, but off by an inch. And her laptop, normally closed and locked, had been left open. She called Maya. "This is bigger than we thought," Maya whispered. "Be careful." The next day, Jordan received a visit from someone unexpected. He introduced himself as Marcus Bell, a former Marine turned private investigator. He had sharp eyes and a calm voice. "I've been following your case," he said. "And I think I can help." Jordan studied him. "Why?" "Because I've seen this happen too many times. Good people railroaded, records erased, footage lost. And no one ever answers for it." She nodded. "Then let's find out who's behind it." Together, they began piecing together Dalton's past. It turned out Dalton had a sealed complaint from 2 years ago involving a traffic stop on another black veteran, an Air Force captain. The complaint had vanished. The captain had moved states. But Marcus tracked him down. Jordan and Maya flew to meet him in a quiet diner outside of Phoenix. His name was James Cooper, and he looked startled to see them. "You're digging into Dalton?" he asked. "Yes," Jordan said. "And we think your case might be part of a pattern." Cooper nodded slowly. "He pulled me over. Accused me of having stolen plates. Had me on the curb for 45 minutes. When I showed my ID, he said I was too clean. Like I didn't fit the profile." "Did you file a complaint?" Maya asked. "I tried. But then I got an anonymous letter. Said if I wanted to keep my clearance, I'd drop it." Jordan's stomach turned. Cooper looked at her. "I'm glad someone's finally standing up." Back in the city, the courthouse prepared for the next hearing. Jordan knew more eyes would be watching this time. More cameras. More pressure. But what she didn't know yet was that Officer Dalton wasn't the only one with something to hide. Because just 3 days before the hearing, Marcus uncovered something disturbing. There was an internal memo from the police department dated 2 days after Jordan's arrest. It mentioned a classified incident, unusual attention from federal oversight, and an order to suspend all digital records related to incident JH-47. Jordan stared at the printout. "JH," she said. "That's me." And then Marcus handed her another envelope. This one hand-delivered, no sender, just one sentence scribbled on a piece of paper. "They weren't after you because of what you did. They were after you because of what you know." Jordan felt a chill run down her spine. What did they think she knew? And who exactly were they? The pieces didn't fit. But something was unraveling. Cover-up, lie, and possibly something even darker hidden beneath it all. And with the next court date approaching fast, the truth was getting harder to hide. But would they uncover it in time? Or was someone already one step ahead? The storm was building, and Jordan Hayes was right in the center of it. The morning of the next hearing came with gray clouds hanging low in the sky, as if the city itself knew something was about to break. Outside the courthouse, people gathered, some with signs, others with cameras. The story had taken on a life of its own. News outlets had picked it up, local activists had organized rallies, and veterans across the country were beginning to speak out. But for Jordan Hayes, none of it mattered as much as what was still hidden. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was charged. Jordan sat quietly, her eyes scanning the courtroom. Dalton hadn't arrived yet, but she knew he would. He wouldn't back down, not because he was brave but because he was scared. And scared men often overplayed their hand. Maya leaned in and whispered, "They filed a motion this morning, trying to discredit you. They're arguing your military record is incomplete. That there are gaps." Jordan blinked slowly. "Gaps? Classified deployments," Maya said. "They're saying we can't prove your discipline or credibility because parts of your service file are sealed." Jordan gave a short, humorless laugh. "So now I'm too loyal to be trusted." But Maya didn't smile. "They're reaching. Which means they're desperate." Meanwhile, Marcus Bell had continued his digging. His work had uncovered another twist. The sealed memo marked JH-47 wasn't just filed by the precinct. It had been routed through an off-site department that handled surveillance protocols. A little-known division buried deep in city operations. And oddly enough, Dalton's brother, Agent Thomas Dalton, was listed as a security liaison for that department. Marcus pulled Maya and Jordan aside before the hearing started. "I think this goes beyond just one bad cop. There's something about that stop that triggered attention from above. Someone wanted it covered up fast." "But why?" Jordan asked. "It wasn't anything unusual. I was driving home." Marcus paused, then opened his folder. "There was an encrypted radio transmission flagged near your location that night. No one's been able to decode it. But it was picked up by federal monitoring systems and attached to your incident report." Jordan stared at the page. "You're saying the stop had nothing to do with me?" "I'm saying it might have had everything to do with where you were. Or who they thought you were meeting." Jordan thought back. She'd driven home the usual route. Nothing out of place. Except, she did remember seeing a man standing near a bus stop that night. Dressed in civilian clothes but standing too still, too straight. Military posture. She hadn't given it a second thought. But now, back in the courtroom, Dalton finally entered. He looked different. More guarded. No cocky walk. No smug glances. This time he kept his head down. His attorney walked beside him. A tall man with the polished look of someone used to making problems disappear. As the hearing began, the judge asked both sides to present their updates. Maya laid out the inconsistencies, the missing footage, the anonymous photos, and the odd chain of command surrounding the incident. The judge listened intently, taking notes. But Dalton's lawyer was quick to respond. "Your Honor, while the defense presents a compelling narrative, we must consider that Lieutenant Commander Hayes may be attempting to divert from her own questionable background. Portions of her service record are unavailable. Additionally, there is no proof the officer acted out of bias or aggression. In fact, we believe Hayes was involved in activities on the night of the incident that raised legitimate security concerns." Jordan's eyes narrowed. That was new. "What activities?" the judge asked. "We don't have clearance to say," the attorney replied. "But we are requesting an in-camera review of classified documents related to her file and any possible external threats that may have involved her." Jordan's heart pounded. Now they were twisting it into something bigger. Or worse, maybe she had been caught in something without knowing it. As the judge called for a short recess to consider the request, Maya turned to her, furious. "They're trying to paint you as a threat. Like you're the one under investigation." Jordan said nothing, her mind racing. Was it possible she had crossed paths with something or someone that night without realizing it? Marcus had been working on another lead. A whistleblower from inside the department who claimed he had seen the original footage from Dalton's bodycam. He hadn't wanted to come forward. But after seeing Jordan's name in the news, something had changed. His name was Eric Torres, a junior IT technician. Marcus met him in a quiet diner near the edge of the city. "I don't know everything," Torres said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "But I saw the footage. Didn't cut out." Dalton turned it off. Manually. Right after she showed her ID. "Did anyone else see it?" Marcus asked. Torres nodded. "His brother. The guy from Internal Affairs. He came in the next day and told us to archive the file under restricted access. I didn't ask questions. But it felt wrong. Can you get a copy?" Torres hesitated. I already tried. It's gone. But I kept something. He pulled out a flash drive and slid it across the table. Marcus brought it straight to Jordan and Maya that night. The file was only 10 seconds long, but it was enough. It showed Jordan clearly identifying herself, standing calmly beside her vehicle. Dalton's voice was low, almost a whisper. Doesn't matter who you are. You don't belong here. Then the screen went dark. Back in court, they weren't allowed to present the video yet. It would need to be authenticated. But it was a bombshell waiting to drop. And someone in power clearly didn't want that moment to come. Because the next morning, Jordan's apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen. Just tossed. Her medals, her photos, even the plaque she'd received for her service in Afghanistan, thrown to the floor like trash. The message was clear. Back off. But Jordan didn't scare easy. As she stood looking at the mess, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Next time, it won't be your apartment. She showed it to Maya and Marcus, who both looked at her with the same question in their eyes. Was it still just about a traffic stop? Or had Jordan stumbled into something deeper? Something powerful people were trying very hard to keep buried. The court date was approaching fast. But the truth was moving faster. And if Jordan didn't find all the pieces soon, someone else might decide to silence her before she ever got the chance. The city felt colder that week. The air had a strange stillness to it, like something was waiting to happen. Jordan barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her apartment in pieces, her military plaques shattered, her service medals scattered across the floor like they meant nothing. But it wasn't just about the break-in anymore, it was the message behind it. Someone out there was watching. Someone powerful. And they were getting nervous. Marcus doubled down on security. He installed cameras around Jordan's building, switched out her locks, even taught her how to spot a tail in traffic. Maya stayed close too, knowing they were running out of time. The final hearing was just days away, and they still hadn't gotten access to the full video evidence or any official documents related to the mysterious JH-47 memo. Every door they knocked on seemed to slam shut. Every request for transparency was met with delays or silence. But then something changed. An envelope showed up outside Maya's office one evening. No return address. No name. Just a single thumb drive and a printed message. If she goes down, so do we all. Maya immediately called Marcus. Together they ran the contents in a secure, offline laptop. What they found made their blood run cold. It wasn't just body cam footage. It was internal surveillance. Grainy black and white recordings from inside the police precinct. The timestamps matched the day after Jordan's arrest. The video showed Officer Dalton entering a restricted evidence room with his brother, Thomas Dalton. They were carrying a hard drive. The camera caught them removing a file from the system, handing it off to a third man in a suit, face blurred but posture stiff. Government. They weren't just hiding the video. They were laundering it. Jordan watched it in silence, her jaw tight. They've been covering this up since day one. Marcus nodded. And they're using national security as a shield. The question now wasn't whether Dalton had acted unlawfully. That part was clear. The question was, what was so dangerous in that video that they'd risk their careers, their reputations, maybe even federal charges to bury it? Maya decided it was time to go public. But just before she could speak to the press, her office was hit with a legal gag order. Suddenly, every angle was tightening. Someone had pulled strings at a very high level. She couldn't say a word without risking disbarment. It was a clear move. Silence the attorney, pressure the client, shut it all down. But Jordan wouldn't stay quiet. She arranged a private meeting with a local reporter she trusted, a veteran named Lisa Moreno who had covered military and justice issues for over a decade. Jordan told her everything off the record. Traffic stop, the cover-up, the threats, the sealed files, and the strange surveillance footage that pointed to something more than just a bad cop with a grudge. Lisa listened carefully, scribbling notes, asking sharp questions. Then she looked Jordan in the eye and said, "If I publish this, they'll come after me too." Jordan nodded. "I know. But if you don't, they'll just keep doing it to the next person. Lisa promised to dig deeper. But even she could sense it. The walls were closing in. Then came the day before the final hearing. Jordan was leaving the grocery store when she noticed a man across the parking lot. Clean-cut, tall, wearing a windbreaker that screamed federal. He didn't approach. Just stood by his car watching. When she got into her truck, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message. Just a photo. It was her standing in the parking lot. Taken seconds ago. Jordan's grip tightened on the wheel. She drove straight to Marcus and showed him. He checked the number. Untraceable. Burner. They want you rattled. But Jordan wasn't rattled, she was boiling. She had served her country in war zones. She had led missions in places most people couldn't find on a map. And now, for simply standing up for her rights, she was being treated like a threat. Like a target. That night, Maya received an anonymous call. The voice was low, male disguised. But what he said changed everything. You want the original video? Still exists. They didn't destroy it. They moved it. And I know where. Before Maya could ask who he was, the line went dead. An hour later, Marcus and Jordan met her in her office. The address the caller had given was an off-site data facility tied to city contracts. Technically private, but known to work with law enforcement on surveillance backups. If it's there, Marcus said, they don't want it found. Jordan looked at them both. Then we need to get it before tomorrow. They knew time was short. And what they were about to do wasn't exactly by the book. But when justice is blocked from every side, sometimes the truth needs a push. They arrived at the facility just after midnight. It was quiet, barely lit, tucked between two industrial warehouses. Marcus had done his homework. He had a contact inside. A maintenance worker named Leo who owed him a favor from years back. Leo let them in through the back. The room they needed was down a long hallway. Security was tight. Digital locks, badge readers, surveillance cameras. But Marcus had tools. And Leo had access. Inside the cold, humming server room, they searched for the folder marked JH-47. The system was complex, encrypted, deliberately mislabeled. But finally they found it. A folder buried under layers of unrelated codes. When they opened the file, the room went silent. The footage showed more than just the stop. More than just Dalton's aggression. It showed two black SUVs parked down the road. Men stepping out. Watching. Dalton looked back at them before approaching Jordan's car. There was a nod, barely noticeable, but clear. It was never a random stop. Jordan hadn't just been pulled over. She'd been intercepted. They copied the file. Got out fast. And just before sunrise, they backed it up in 3 separate drives. One with Maya, one with Marcus, and one locked away in a location only Jordan knew. As the courthouse prepared for the hearing that morning, the judge, the press, and the entire city had no idea what was about to be revealed. Jordan stood on the courthouse steps, calm, collected. The crowd watched her, quiet with expectation. Inside, Officer Dalton waited, unaware that his story, the carefully crafted lies, the buried evidence, the network of people protecting him, was about to crack wide open. But still, one question burned in Jordan's mind. If they were so desperate to hide the truth, what else were they willing to do to keep it buried? The courtroom was buzzing before the judge even entered. Word had gotten around that something big was about to happen, though no one outside Jordan's circle knew exactly what. Reporters filled the back rows, eyes fixed on her as she sat beside Maya, calm on the outside but wired tight beneath her still expression. Marcus sat behind them, phone in hand, backup drive secure in his coat pocket. Everyone felt it, like the air just before a storm. Dalton walked in flanked by his lawyer, smug again, like he thought everything was under control. He didn't look at Jordan. Maybe he couldn't. Maybe he still believed he would walk out untouched. But then, right before the judge took the bench, the courtroom door opened, and everything changed. 2 men in dark suits stepped in, flashing credentials. Federal. One of them walked straight to the clerk and whispered something. The clerk nodded and stepped away from the bench, disappearing through the side door. Maya's brows drew together. That's not normal. Jordan watched the suits. They didn't speak. They didn't move. Just stood like statues, one at the back of the room, one closer to the front. Guarding. But guarding who? Moments later the judge entered, face tight, more serious than before. This court has received a sealed request from a federal agency, he said, looking directly at Maya. Certain elements of this case may now fall under restricted review. Gasps rippled through the room. Maya stood immediately. Your Honor, with respect, this is a state-level proceeding. My client is a private citizen. These so-called restrictions are designed to suppress evidence, not protect national security. The judge hesitated, clearly struggling. I am not at liberty to say more. We will proceed, but the court must exercise caution moving forward. Jordan didn't flinch, but something in her gut twisted. They were trying to cut the legs out from under her, again. But this time they were doing it in broad daylight. Then came the second blow. Just as Maya prepared to play the recovered footage, the courtroom lights flickered, and every screen in the room went black. A loud buzz shot through the sound system, followed by silence. The bailiff moved quickly, checking wires. The tech team scrambled. Nothing was working. Jordan turned to Marcus. Did they jam it? He checked his phone. Signal's dead. Even Wi-Fi. They killed the whole feed. Who has that kind of access? Maya asked, her voice low and tense. Before anyone could answer, one of the federal agents stepped forward and addressed the judge. We need to speak with you privately. Now. The judge looked shaken but nodded. 10-minute recess. As the judge disappeared with the agents, the courtroom broke into chaos. Reporters whispered furiously. Defense attorneys conferred, and Maya clenched her jaw. They knew we had it. They're trying to stop it at the final second. Jordan stood, her voice calm but sharp. Then we go around them. Outside the courtroom, chaos waited too. Protesters, cameras, citizens, all packed around the courthouse steps. As Jordan exited, a mic was shoved toward her face. Commander Hayes, do you believe the federal government is interfering in your case? She didn't flinch. I believe some people are afraid of the truth. But that doesn't mean we stop. Marcus handed her a phone, a backup unit with a direct feed. Lisa, the reporter Jordan had spoken with before, was waiting on the other end, her voice urgent. I've got the broadcast ready. I just need the footage. Maya gave Jordan a look. Once you release this, there's no turning back. Jordan nodded and hit send. Within minutes, Lisa's live stream hit social media. The title was simple but devastating. What they didn't want you to see. The Jordan Hayes bodycam footage. The video played across screens around the world. Dalton approaching Jordan. His voice laced with something darker than bias. The moment he cut the camera. The black SUVs. The hidden watchers. The video had no narration. No opinion. Just raw, unsettling facts. And the public responded. The video went viral within the hour. But with that exposure came something no one expected. Lisa called Jordan back, her voice rattled. We just got a call from someone claiming to be a former contractor with the agency that handles encrypted surveillance. He says there's more. Jordan froze. More what? There was another camera. Not from Dalton. From one of the SUVs. Internal monitoring. He says it shows a transfer. What kind of transfer? Maya asked, her voice tightening. Something handed off, Lisa said. From Dalton to a man in the vehicle. Drive. And get this. He says that wasn't the first time. Jordan felt like the floor moved under her. They've done this before. That's what he's saying. And not just with cops. Military cases. Veterans. People flagged after coming home. It's bigger than you. Jordan went quiet. The pieces were shifting, clicking together in a new way. What if she hadn't just been stopped because of who she was, but because she was seen as a threat by a system watching certain veterans? What if this wasn't about Dalton's racism alone, but about a machine designed to track, silence, and suppress. Maya's phone buzzed again, an alert. Another leak. An email chain from Dalton's brother Thomas, discussing a program called Project Resolve. Buried language suggested it involved monitoring high-risk individuals with classified deployment histories. The keywords were chilling: containment, behavior deviation, influence control. Jordan's file had been tagged under that same program. She looked at Maya. This wasn't a traffic stop. Maya nodded. This was a test. Provocation. They wanted to see how you'd react. Marcus added. And when you didn't fall into the trap, they had to make you the problem. The stakes had just gone up tenfold. Now it wasn't just about clearing Jordan's name. It was about exposing a network of targeted profiling, of military veterans, of black service members, of anyone the system saw as inconvenient. As Jordan stood on the steps of the courthouse, a sudden hush fell over the crowd. Every phone started buzzing at once. A statement had just gone live from a whistleblower inside the agency. Anonymous, but clear. I was ordered to suppress evidence in the Hayes case. I have seen what they do to people like her. She isn't the first. If this reaches the public, others may finally come forward. Jordan stared out at the sea of cameras, faces, voices, people finally paying attention. But deep inside, she knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something far bigger. And someone, somewhere, wasn't going to let her keep talking. The air outside the courthouse buzzed with tension, but it was nothing compared to what was happening inside. When the court resumed, the judge returned looking pale. The federal agents were gone, but something had changed behind his eyes, like he'd just been shown something he wasn't supposed to see. He called everyone to order and allowed Maya to continue her defense, but with a quiet warning. Proceed with caution. The consequences of today's hearing may reach further than this courtroom. Maya stood tall, calm but firm. She pulled up the footage, the same video that had already spread online, and let it play for the judge and jury. Dalton's voice echoed through the room, sharp and aggressive. The SUV in the distance, the nod, the cut to black. It all unraveled, second by second. Dalton shifted in his seat, jaw tight. His lawyer tried to object, claiming the video was illegally obtained, but it was too late. The court had already seen it. The truth was out. Then Maya did something unexpected. She called a new witness. A man in plain clothes stepped forward. No name badge. Just quiet steps and eyes that had seen too much. He was the whistleblower. The man who had sent the documents, who had risked everything to tell the truth. The judge allowed his testimony behind closed doors, but his statement was entered into the record. He confirmed it all. Project Resolve, the targeting system, the files tagged with red flags, and the way Jordan's arrest had been engineered. She wasn't just profiled, he said. She was selected. Jordan sat still, her jaw clenched, hands folded tight. But inside her chest burned. Not with anger, though that was there, but with the weight of something even heavier. Vindication. After all the silence, after all the disbelief and resistance, the truth was standing in a courtroom, with the system finally forced to listen. The judge recessed again to deliberate. It was supposed to take an hour. Took 15 minutes. When he returned, he cleared his throat. The court finds that the evidence against Commander Jordan Hayes was manipulated. The arrest was unlawful, the use of force excessive, and the chain of events leading to her detainment compromised by outside influence. He looked directly at Dalton. This court recommends immediate investigation into Officer Dalton's conduct and the broader implications of Project Resolve. The room erupted, not in celebration but in a stunned silence. Everyone knew the real fight was just beginning. Jordan took a deep breath, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to exhale fully. But just as the courtroom began to empty, Maya's phone buzzed again. She checked it, and her face changed. "What is it?" Jordan asked. Maya slowly turned the screen toward her. It was a new leak. A file labeled, Resolve Under Blacklist, Alpha. And Jordan's name, wasn't at the top. It was second. Above her, someone else had been marked as more dangerous. Someone with access. Someone still inside. Then came the twist. Marcus' phone rang, an encrypted line. He answered, listening without saying a word. When he hung up, his voice dropped. "They've found Lisa." Jordan's heart sank. "What do you mean found?" "She's missing. Her house was empty. Her car's still in the driveway. And the drive with the backup copy of the footage, it's gone." Jordan's victory felt like it had slipped right through her fingers. Because even with a court win, even with the public on their side, there were still people out there trying to erase the story. Erase the people telling it. Someone had taken Lisa. And whoever was first on that list might be next. Jordan stared out at the crowd of reporters now shouting questions. She didn't answer. Not yet. Her war wasn't over. It had just gone deeper. Because the court gave her justice. But now she needed the truth. And this time she wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for everyone still marked, still silenced, still waiting for someone to stand up and strike back. The sun had started to set behind the courthouse when Jordan finally stepped outside again. The noise of reporters and protesters had thinned, leaving behind a quieter energy, one of tension but also of change. Maya stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes scanning the crowd. Marcus was a few feet away, phone glued to his ear, still trying to track down any clue about Lisa. The mood wasn't celebratory, not really. It felt more like standing at the edge of something that no longer could be ignored. A woman approached Jordan quietly, holding a folder. She wore a plain blazer, no press badge, no microphone. Just calm eyes and steady steps. She introduced herself as Carla, a social worker with a background in veteran affairs. She had watched the entire case unfold, and now she had something for Jordan, a list of other veterans who had come forward since the footage was released. There were more than 24 names. Men and women. Different backgrounds. Different branches. But all tagged. All marked. Some didn't even know until now. Jordan took the folder with both hands and just stared at the names. Each one felt like a mirror. She knew then that her story was only a small piece of something larger. Back at her apartment later that night, Jordan sat in silence, the soft hum of the city outside her window. Maya had offered to stay, but Jordan needed the quiet. The case was over, but the weight hadn't lifted. It had simply changed shape. She looked at a picture of herself in uniform from 5 years ago, taken during a ceremony. Back then, she believed serving her country meant doing the right thing, trusting the system. But now, after everything, she understood the truth more clearly. Sometimes the system isn't broken, it was built that way. Still, she hadn't let it crush her. She'd fought back. She had struck back. And even though there were still risks, still shadows moving behind closed doors, she wasn't afraid anymore. 'Cause now people were watching. People were listening. The next morning, Jordan met with Lisa's editor. He hadn't heard from her either, but he promised to keep her story alive, to keep digging. Marcus had put together a timeline based on Lisa's last known movements. Jordan wasn't a detective, but she had instincts. Instincts sharpened by years of service and a lifetime of being underestimated. The editor handed her a flash drive. "Lisa gave me this a week ago, just in case," he said. "Told me to give it to you if anything happened." Jordan plugged it in that night. On it was a short video. Lisa speaking directly into the camera, her voice calm but urgent. "If you're seeing this, then something's gone wrong. But that's okay. Because the truth is already moving. Jordan, you reminded people that not all heroes wear uniforms anymore. Some of them sit in courtrooms. Some of them speak up even when no one's ready to listen. Keep going. We're not done yet." The screen faded to black. Jordan leaned back in her chair, heart heavy but steady. She didn't know where Lisa was, but she knew she hadn't vanished for nothing. Her work had ignited something. Over the next few weeks, more voices stepped forward. A congressional hearing was requested. Independent journalists began tracing other cases connected to Project Resolve. Jordan was invited to speak on national television, not as a victim, but as a voice for others still caught in the same web. She declined the spotlight at first, but then she realized something important. Visibility was protection. The more people knew her face, her story, the harder it would be for anyone to silence her again. Maya continued fighting cases for other veterans. Marcus took a job with an advocacy group for those wrongfully surveilled. And Jordan, she started meeting with the names in that folder one by one. Listening. Learning. Letting them know they weren't alone. The twist, the heartbreak, the betrayal, it had changed her. But it had also awakened something. Not rage. Not revenge. But purpose. One evening, she stood at the front of a small town hall meeting packed with families, former service members, and community leaders. She held the mic without notes, without a script. "I used to believe justice was something you were handed if you waited long enough," she said. "But I've learned it's something you have to fight for, even when the odds are stacked. I was labeled, followed, set up. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I didn't fit the profile of someone who stays quiet. But I'm still here. And I'm not going anywhere." Applause followed. Not the kind you get after speech, but the kind that comes from people who've lived something similar and finally feel seen. As she stepped down, a young woman in uniform approached her. "I saw your story," she said. "It gave me the courage to speak up about what happened to me overseas. They told me to keep quiet. That no one would believe me." Jordan nodded. "They always say that. Until someone does." The woman smiled, eyes glassy. "Thank you for being that someone." In the end, Jordan's battle in court had become a spark that lit something much bigger. She didn't set out to become a voice for others. She just wanted to clear her name, to be treated fairly. But in doing so, she helped reveal a truth hidden in plain sight. A truth that forced people to look closer at how systems operate and who they protect. The officer who kicked her was under federal review. The agency behind Project Resolve faced multiple investigations. But more importantly, conversations had started in homes, in schools, in communities that once stayed silent. Change didn't come quickly. Never does. But it had started. Jordan stood on her balcony one night, looking out over the city. She didn't feel like a symbol or a warrior. Just a woman who'd been pushed too far and decided not to let it happen again. She was still healing. Still carrying the scars. But she'd earned something powerful. Truth, clarity, and a new mission. And for the first time in a long while, she wasn't walking alone. Because now, people weren't just watching. They were rising. And the ones who once tried to silence her. They were finally the ones looking over their shoulders.